Hello, I'm Patty Brown. This is my second attempt of doing a podcast. I tried to do one like 3 weeks ago. I was going to call it the Extraordinary Ordinary, and I was really wanting to get people on here who do amazing things. I have a lot of friends who do amazing things and people I know. And usually on podcasts, everyone I listen to, it's all famous people. And I just wanted to listen to, sometimes I want to hear just normal people and what they have to say about things and what they're doing. And so I was going to do that. And I actually did one, but I never put it out there. But I kind of started thinking about things, maybe I ought to check this name out and make sure that there's not a podcast named The Extraordinary Ordinary. And so I did a search, and sure enough, several podcasts have that name. And one actually is by Apple. And I thought maybe this is not such a good idea to steal Apple's name for a podcast. So I kind of started thinking about it, and I still want to interview some people. And so I was trying to figure out, what I could do and talk about that I thought would be interesting and where I could bring some people on. And so I'm a writer, and I've published one collection of poetry, and I'm working on kind of a long kind of novel. But I also have written a book about my childhood, and it's called The Town That Raised Me. And so this podcast is called now The Town That Raised Me. And the reason I wanted to do this is because I have a lot of stories about my childhood. And I grew up in really a different time. Things were so radically different. And the stories, I think, really resonate with people my age. But I think they kind of resonate with people not only in small towns, but in big cities. And it gives like younger people a chance to kind of hear like what it was like before technology. So I'm gonna read a very short story today. It was like the first one in the book, and it was when I was really young, probably under 2 years old. And it is very short, but it's somewhat important. And it's funny about these stories. Even though they were just my childhood happening in real time at that time, they have sort of like this wisdom to them now. Like when I go back and read the stories, they have a different meaning. Not just the story, I guess is what I'm saying, not just what happened. So I want to tell you a little bit about my parents. I had wonderful parents, and my mom was raised in Asheville. My dad, maybe about an hour and a half away in Silva, both up in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. And my dad went off to World War II, and he actually met my mother's brother, and he introduced them, and they eloped. And after they got married, they went off to California, which I thought was just like incredibly brave at that time. For two young people, although my dad was 12 years older than my mother, to just move across the country. My mother was a singer. She had 11 brothers and sisters, and all of them are gifted musicians. And a lot of my cousins are very talented, musically inclined too. And my dad, his family they were educators, they were writers, poets, and they just felt like that education could like really transform societies. And my dad believed that. And so once my mother, she was singing in San Francisco, so she loved it. My dad worked for a bank, but then he got offered a job back in North Carolina as a high school principal. And so they moved, and my mom was somewhat disappointed. My brother actually was born in California, and then my sister was born when they moved back. So I was not born until they actually moved to my hometown, and that's where we lived. The rest of my parents' lives, and it was in the foothills of North Carolina, not too far from Charlotte, and maybe about 35 minutes to the airport. And at the time, there were mills there. It was a solid middle class town. There were small city schools. Now it's a county-wide, but at that time it was the city, and then the county had a separate school system. And in a lot of ways, my childhood was like a fairy tale. Now, I know for a lot of people it wasn't. In fact, when I was in the 7th grade, the schools were desegregated. And prior to that time, I think it was very different for African Americans in my community. And it started kind of slow, but there were no serious incidents. I know that a policeman sat outside our house, but nothing happened really. And I don't know if it was because of the size of the town, or if it was just there were so many wonderful people in leadership roles, including my dad, who really felt like this was the best thing for our country, that we had to be together, not separate, to have really a United States. And so things went really well. So I don't, I had some really good friends of color, and I'm still friends with them today. And even though I was from the South, I'm pretty progressive. And I think it was just because of the dinner table that I grew up at. So anyway, I'm going to kind of go back to, when I was really, really small. But before I tell you that story, I want to read a passage out of a book I'm reading. A friend of mine, she sent me this book from Amazon, and it's called Paradise in Plainview. And in fact, she saw me just the other day, and she asked me if I'd read the book. And I had started the book. I do love to read, but early in the morning I write, because I am a writer, and I try to write a poem every single day. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're terrible, but just writing every day really keeps those creative juices flowing. And I'm working on a longer novel, and then this book about my childhood. And the reason is because of the town that raised me, is because although my parents were ultimately responsible for my growing up, so many other people played such an important role in who I became. And I'm so grateful to them. And I have so many stories about them. And I wish I could thank every single one of them, but it's impossible. So maybe this book, in a way, is a tribute to all those people, and to all my friends too that I grew up with. But anyway, so this book is about a couple who they're on a second marriage. They are not living in the same town, and the wife decides that she's going to move to where her husband is in Los Angeles. And so it's about finding our Zen, which I'm really into this, because I think in some ways, I know I'm a highly sensitive person, but I'm also kind of like an old soul. So I kind of get this whole feeling. So let me just read you a couple things out of this, and then I think it's going to make sense about what I wrote too. So she says, paradise is a backyard, not just my backyard, but everyone's backyard. Teeming with weeds, leaves, half-dead trees, moles, mosquitoes, mud, dust, skunks, and raccoons. With a novice gardener and a reluctant groundskeeper, like the entire world we live in, bounded only by how far we can see. And then she says, but when I ventured afield, sidelined by things that seemed much more entertaining or important, I always came back to this patch of patient earth. Time after time, I realized that everything I want or need, the living truth of life, love, beauty, purpose, and peace, is taught to me right here, no farther away than the ground beneath my feet. I am a pilgrim, as we all are pilgrims, making my way through a paradise hidden in plain sight. That's what this book is about, plain sight. Okay, and then this. First, you have to find the garden. It seems far off, but it never is. You will arrive at a place you've never been before, and you will enter it. Then you will come to see that your life is the life of the entire universe. You may wander off, but you will keep coming back. Eventually, you won't want to go anywhere else. So, last thing, from the curb, you'll see the gate. From the gate, you'll see the path. From the path, you'll see the ground. And overhead, the sun and moon to light your way. These signposts will bring you to paradise. So the reason I wanted to read this is because I think in our lives, we are all on that journey, and we're all trying to find our place and where we belong. And some people never find it. They never arrive where they want to be. And some people just get off track, off course, and they have to readjust. Sometimes they're older when they do that. And then their last years, they find that place, that feeling of home. And so I think the journey is really our perspective and how we approach life and how we approach each other. And I do think there is something about, like that ground where you stand and how you are tied to it. And so when I was growing up, I lived in this town my whole childhood. I went to school with the same friends for all 12 years in kindergarten. And so we really got to know each other. And in fact, a friend of mine from my hometown sent me a song, and I'm sure you've heard of it, Moon River. And it was actually written the year I was born. It was one of my mother's favorite songs. And it talks about Huckleberry Friends in there. And this song definitely has a romantic overtones. But when I hear that song and it talks about drifters, off to see the world, I just think about what it was like when we were kids. And that's what we did. We were just off to see the world, and we loved each other, we grew up together. We really knew each other. And it was just this amazing experience. And we were free, even as little kids, to go out and play and just explore, and we did. We did just that. So this started really early in my life. So let me read you the first part of my book. That this is the very first story, and it's like the first story that I actually remember. And I don't know if I actually do remember it or if it's just I've heard this story so many times from my parents that it seems like I remember it. But I do think there are moments I vividly can see my dad doing certain things. And so I think I do remember it. So here it is. This is the first, it's very short, just 2 paragraphs, because a lot of these stories that are in my book, I actually shared them with a group that grew up that was from Shelby on a social media site. And they would show pictures of places and old buildings and old cars and all kind of stuff. And I just started sharing like memories. And so they resonated. That I don't know what to say. And so people had such similar experiences, even friends from other towns, bigger cities, they too, they resonated. So here is the first little story. When I was first born, my parents lived on Oak Street. After I had just learned to walk and climb, my mom put me in a playpen outside. She left me for a few minutes and I climbed out and started walking up the street. I turned left on Thompson Street and then right on Graham Street. There was a small store not far up the road. It was like an old-fashioned convenience store. It had a dirt parking lot out front with a lot of trees and wooden boxes that they filled with vegetables in the summer. They sold fresh vegetables and ice cream and milk and eggs and candy. My mom went into a panic looking for me. Without a cell phone, she called my dad for help from the house and then started walking the neighborhood while calling my name. My dad said he would be right home. My mom was searching the neighborhood frantically. My dad saw me on his way home and pulled over to get me. He asked, "Where are you off to?" And I said, "The store." And he said, "Climb in." And he took me there. And the key to this story is that he didn't get mad at me. He didn't punish me. He didn't send me to my room. I don't know if you do that with little kids anyway, but he said, "Climb in, come on, I'll take you there." And the most amazing thing about my childhood is that so many people helped to take me there where I wanted to go, and they helped me. And I feel like that is missing today in our society. It's like we really are little islands that we are separate from other people, from people that we care about and that care about us. We just don't see each other as much. I don't know if it's because we don't have time to do that, or if it's because, it's just, we're so busy. People just like work so incredibly much that they just don't have time to spend with each other. But when I was a child, things were much more laid back, and we did have time to spend with each other, and we did. And it was not just with my friends, but with their families and their siblings and their parents, although it wasn't the same kind of love that I received from my mom and dad, but there was this love there, and I had people I could really count on. I never felt like I was really alone. So, it was just this wonderful feeling to have this like safety net, in my town, this soft place to land where there were just so many people that cared about each other. In fact, it was like safe for me to go uptown, even as a young girl, because at any store, the restaurants, I mean, everything, the newsstand, we knew the people that worked there. They knew us. They knew who we belonged to, and so we always had somebody to go to help for help if we needed it. And sometimes that help was just being there, just being welcome in somebody else's house, and going on trips with them, and sharing birthdays, and just weddings, and when people passed away. It's just an amazing kind of thing that I don't think kids today are experiencing to that degree. I'm not saying all kids, but so many kids are moved, like so often. And then it's just, I mean, when you drive through neighborhoods, you don't see as many kids, out playing as when we were kids. I mean, we were out until dark, and our parents didn't really know where we were. We were just supposed to be home by supper time. And that's what happened. So the stories that I'll be telling you some will be about certain friends, and some of the relationships I had with them. And some are just some of the fun things that happened to me and that I did, and the way my life sort of unfolded. And I think that just the way I was raised in this small, laid back town, um, time seemed to go on forever. And sometimes I was like, "Oh, I'm so bored. If I could just live somewhere else." But, you know, we really found things to do. And I got a horse. I always wanted a horse. I finally got one. I spent so many days at the barn. It's just memories that are just unbelievable. I can't explain it. And it didn't seem like that there was so much pressure on us, as there are on kids today. We didn't have as much homework, and we all turned out okay, But it's just, I think there's just this pressure, and you read about kids today, with suicide and depression and anxiety. I mean, those were things that I really had never really heard about. I mean, about being anxious or depressed. I'm sure some people felt that way, but it wasn't like it is today, where it's like a crisis. There was just nothing like that. And I do think it was the lifestyle that we had. We did not have technology. And as great as technology is, we spent more time with each other. And I think that's the key here, is that we're not spending as much time with each other, and we're not tying ourselves to the ground like she's talking about in the book that my friend gave me, where we're actually putting our hands in the dirt and we're building things together. It's harder now for some reason for us to do that. So I'm anxious to share my story with you, my stories. And I do hope to have some people on, because I have some neat friends that have done some neat things, and they played a role in my childhood. And then there's some people that, live in other towns that kind of have had similar experiences where they lived, because I think it was just that time period, that it just, it was, the economy was doing really well for the most part until like maybe the late 70s. And violence, and I mean, no one ever would ever have thought that kids would be shot in a school, or at a movie theater, or people at a grocery store. I mean, none of that was even on our radar. Life was just getting up and going where we wanted to go, needed to go, school, some activities, doing the things that we love, being with the people we love. And there were just all these people that would help us go where we needed to go. And it made such a difference in my life, because I felt anchored. And I'm not sure that we can use that word today, that families and kids feel anchored. Some do, but there are so many more that aren't. There's just not that feeling, in the world today. So I look forward to, like, talking with you once a week. And I look forward to reading you my stories. And I hope that you will enjoy maybe reminiscing about your past, or thinking about how we could change the world now. I'm not one to say that we should go back in time because we really can't do that. We need to go into the future. But I think we have a lot to fix and a lot to do to try to make the world a better place. And maybe we're on the cusp of doing that with climate change. And it would be nice if we could, even though we're hearing so much about artificial intelligence right now, humans are amazing creatures. And I'm not sure that artificial intelligence would ever be able to, write or, create the things that humans create. They're programmed by humans, and so I just don't know that that would ever happen. And so we need to be the best humans we can be. And so one thing before I go is I like to doodle a whole lot, and so I don't know if you can see this picture back here. This is a doodle I did. I love to doodle. And when I was in school, I would just draw just stuff like that all the time. And the quote on there, I love this quote. It's, there may be more beautiful times, but this one is ours. And it is ours. It's almost our kids. We're going to be passing the reins over to them. But I hope by hearing some of these stories, you can, just take a minute and go to another time and just imagine what life was like and what we did. And if you're in my age group, and if, just how carefree it was, almost like a fairy tale, and kind of compare it to what we have today, and, how we can, kind of move into the future, but maybe take some things from the past that we are truly, truly missing, and really, really, really need, I think, to have, healthy families and healthy kids and just happy marriages and just everything. We just need to connect more and care about each other more. So to all my Huckleberry friends, and I hope I make a bunch of new ones on here now. I will see you next week. And I think I'm going to upload a podcast on Spotify on Wednesdays, and also on YouTube. And so you can go back and listen if you'd like to. And if you have any interesting things that you might like to point out, I'm all ears. I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm on Twitter. And the name, again, is Patty Brown. And you can send me a message there and I'll get it. And that'd be great. So another thing too, I can only keep this at like 30 minutes because on Spotify, if you go over 40 minutes, you actually have to, there's a lot of cost involved, which I'm not really wanting to do right now. And also, or I'd have to break it up into like two different, I was just very petty about this, two different videos, which I don't think I really want to. Here's my cute little clock. Isn't that great? Can you see it? Yeah, there you go. It's really loud. It went off the other day. I just like jumped. I was like, oh my gosh, old alarm clocks really work. So anyway, so we'll see you next week. Have a great rest of the week. And I have a longer story for you next week that we can talk about. Okay, see you then. Bye.